Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining the TWG Plus webinar series. Today's topic is going to be fourth quarter enrollment strategies, or as I like to call it, who moved the finish line? Recruitment doesn't stop on May 1 anymore. Today's presenters are myself, Chris Tybersky. I'm a senior marketing consultant with TWG Plus. TWG Plus is a marketing and communications firm that works exclusively with higher education clients. We work with colleges and universities across the country on everything from research and institutional branding to improving search strategies, creating publications, and particular to this webinar, also on improving yield strategies and developing the enrollment funnel late in the game. And joining us today is Jennifer Canellis from Kean University. Jennifer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Chris. Jennifer Canellis, Director of Admissions from Kean University. For those of you who don't know, Kean is located in suburban Union, New Jersey, just outside of New York City. We service a student body of more than 16,000 students with our undergraduate and graduate degree programs. And yeah, Chris, it's great to be working with you again.
Actually, yes, Jennifer and I have worked together in a variety of capacities, and as we started working together in a partnership between Kean and TWG Plus, we really got talking about the change in trends in higher ed and the fact that May 1 just doesn't seem to mean what it used to anymore. Students are applying later and later in the game. Institutional yields seem to be dropping, and it seems like the summers are no longer a time to relax, regroup, and plan for the future, but really the summer has become a critical time for building enrollment. So we wanted to share some thoughts with you today. We're going to set the scene a little bit, talk about national trends and about where late cycle admissions is right now across the country. Then I invited Jennifer in to present Kean's perspective, to give you some practical strategies that you can use, some boots on the ground perspective. Then I'm going to share a little bit of what we're seeing at TWG Plus, working with colleges across the country and attending conferences, and what we're hearing, and what we think you can do to improve your overall communications to make sure that your late cycle action is strong. Hopefully you'll walk away with a few key takeaways, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. So let's start by talking about what it looks like out there. For many years, NACAC has been asking schools after May 1, do you still have spaces left in your classrooms? And initially, this was really for students to find out, if I'm a late bloomer, I'm getting a late start on things, what are my options out there? But when we look at that number, and as the number of schools reporting back to NACAC increases, what that means to us is that there's a lot of schools out there that just haven't hit their goals by May 1 anymore. Schools are actively asking students to continue to apply. They're still admitting students late in the game, and certainly they're still working their funnels. In May 2014, over 270 schools posted to NACAC immediately after May 1 saying, please send us more students. Of those, the majority were small to mid-sized schools. Total enrollments 1,000 to 5,000. But some were major public institutions. The University of Arizona was on the list, and they're one of the largest, if not the largest, university in the country. So it's not just one style or type of school. Everybody is looking for students late in the cycle. And why? Yield rates have been dropping for over a decade. Since 2002, we've seen over a 13-point drop in the average yield rate from accept to enrollment. We're down to an average of about 36% now in 2014. Private institutions are actually down around 34%, and publics are at 39%. So what does that mean? That means that the students that you are admitting have set themselves up to have more choices. They have a much bigger decision to make at the point that they've been admitted than they have in the past. Students are applying to 8 to 10 or more schools. They're receiving financial aid packages and scholarships from most of those institutions, and they're waiting until late in the game to make a decision. So that means that your office is working harder. You can't count on your application and your acceptance numbers anymore. You really need to work your post-acceptance communications all the way through the funnel and late into the summer. Also, a lot of schools are hedging their bets. It used to be that wait lists were something that you thought of for premier institutions or tier 1 institutions. But in 2013, 43% of the institutions interviewed by NACAC or surveyed by NACAC reported using some form of wait list. 41% of those said that they had increased the number of students that they were waitlisting over prior years. And over 40% of them increased the number of students they took off that wait list. So more and more schools are creating wait lists. They're putting more students on them, and they're actually going to those wait lists late in the game. 30% of students overall nationwide that were put onto a wait list ended up being admitted ultimately by one of those institutions. That's a big number. That's up 25% from the prior year. So what that means is that it's setting off a chain reaction, right? So a student from your main competitor was on a wait list, you had them admitted, maybe even deposited. Now all of a sudden, they realize that their first choice institution is an option again. Does that mean the student now withdraws their deposit? Do they not even tell you? Do they maybe maintain dual deposits? And you won't know until late in the cycle, maybe even until August or September, that that student's not actually coming. So competition out there is fierce right now. Students are creating more options for themselves. Wait lists are causing chain reactions at every level, not just among top tier institutions. And ultimately, students are making decisions late in the game. What can we do about it? So when Jen and I started talking about what Kean is doing, I was really impressed by the fact that Kean had an organized plan for reaching out to these late students. So I'm going to invite Jen to share their 4 strategies on how to develop the late enrollment cycle. Jen?
Thanks, Chris. So if you take a look at this slide, you'll see that on May 1, we had a total of 8,574 applications. But by September 1, we had a 7% increase in total applications received, which was a total of 630. So what does this tell us? This tells us that there's certainly a late audience that is applying fresh right after May 1. And thinking about that timeline, it makes you think about, well, what can we do differently given the nature of the cycle and the resources that we have available. And this is really easy data for you to pull. What you would want to do is take a second step and actually look at the conversion rate. And when we did this, we noticed that the conversion rate on our late applicants was much higher than the conversion rate of our traditional applicants throughout the regular cycle. So it really, just further validated all the reason why we should budget and, move forward for this late recruitment type of effort. So the first strategy that we had, we really needed to, again, take a look at what could we do now. We have to change the approach because these late applicants have different needs. They're at the different cycle in the admission process. And we also have different resources available to us. So that first bullet, stronger calls to immediate action. If you have an applicant that's applying in January, you might have a softer call to action. You might be inviting them to attend your student for a day or admitted student day. You might even invite them to an open house that you're having that spring. But an applicant who's applying in May or June, we're far past those types of yield events, and you'll need to be inviting them to maybe the here and now events, maybe your info session, and then dive right into the enrollment process. So our stronger calls to immediate action included our 5 steps to enrollment. So, if you haven't visited campus, come visit, and while you're here, we'll walk you through the enrollment steps. And then we also put a much greater emphasis on personal attention. So with 10,000 applications, you rely pretty heavily on an automated communication plan. But with only 630 applications, that really changes the game a bit. We were able to provide that personal attention and that hand-holding approach that all students probably benefit from, but this particular audience has the privilege to benefit from because they don't have that much more competition in the applicant pool. And we treated these as our hottest prospects. We couldn't afford to not treat them as our hottest prospects because the yield rate was so high. And what you'll see in the future slides is a very unique communication plan that we developed for this particular audience because we have to be communicating with them differently. So this slide, you'll see that in the data that we pulled, of those 630 applications, 70% of them live within a 15-mile radius from Kean, from Union, New Jersey. So what does that mean? It means that maybe there's a different need. Maybe they have concerns about traveling far away. Maybe they were accepted into an institution and can no longer, travel that far away, or couldn't get the scholarship they were hoping for and now need to stay home or stay local. So our messaging was really tailored to that type of a concern. You know, what you're looking for is right in your own backyard. And it really carried through to anyone who lived within a 100-mile radius, because we're still really quite local and we still offer housing, and we let the students know that they're not late. You know, we still have everything that they could want or need in an institution right in their own backyard. The second strategy that we did was we kept inviting them to this. We, you know, Ty said that we had a very, you know, planned approach, and I wish that was the case. A lot of this was also, you know, reactionary, as you know, admissions is. That's how the game always is. But what we learned was that there were events that were going on our campus, and it was a good opportunity for us to save on our budget to partner with those events and to invite students to events so that they didn't feel like they missed out on all of those, you know, engagement opportunities. So one of the existing events that we had on campus was By the Water, and By the Water was a production put on that, you know, by our theater crew. And it's all about Hurricane Sandy and the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy and how it affected, you know, New Jersey residents. So it was really, you know, hit home to our particular audience, and it was a nice event to just get students here on campus to visit for no other reason but to just experience campus life. And, you know, we had a little evening reception with just desserts and coffee, and it was a nice way to mingle with our accepted students who hadn't deposited yet. And then also, we decided to host a Student for a Night. So that was on April 29th. Typically our student social is in March, so that's our accepted student social. But on April 29th, we decided to have a barbecue where all of our students were already on campus for a barbecue, you know, our Kean students. And so we just invited our prospects, students that hadn't decided yet, haven't paid their tuition deposit, as another opportunity to mingle with our Kean students and to, you know, play at night with our students and see what campus life is like. And one of the big, I would say, suggestions that I have is to just differentiate what you're offering. So, you know, every campus has these unique gems, and Kean has a lot of unique gems. We have a planetarium, we have a cave, we have 5 theaters on campus, and whenever you can just leverage what you already have on campus to create kind of a unique opportunity to get students to visit this late in the game, I think is a good strategy. And then our third strategy was really honing in on that one-on-one to connection. So basically, with 630 applications, you're not going to yield 100%, but with 630 applications, you can make more phone calls. You can better identify what the needs are of those specific students by calling them, each one of them, checking in with them, sending them personalized emails. And what we did was we initiated a lunch program. So we invited all of our accepted students or applicants within the past 30 days after May 1 to lunch. And approximately 50 students took us up on our offer from May 1 all the way through to the beginning of August. And the lunch was just an opportunity for them to meet with their admissions counselor to, of course, establish a relationship, but also to provide that personal attention to understand what their needs were. Were they really concerned about financial aid and cost, and did we need to walk them through that process? Were they under the misconception that financial aid was no longer available? Were they under the misconception that housing is not available? So really, by having those one-on-one engaged conversations, we were able to find out what those concerns were and address them head-on and get them to campus. And then our last strategy was really to just take advantage of the counselor downtime. And I say that knowing that really there's no such thing as counselor downtime anymore. The summer used to be our quote-unquote time of relaxation. And now it's kind of when our office is amping up and really preventing any of the melt issues that you know, we all highly anticipate. So we've done, since we have a decreased reading volume, means that we can do more phone calls. We created call queues for all of our counselors. We use a CRM system that allows us to strategize which calls our counselors can make and when. So it'll be timed out. You know, after 14 days of incomplete, there could be a call. But with this new time frame, we were able to schedule these calls a lot quicker, a lot sooner, and more frequently. So this didn't cost us any more money than, you know, it would have cost us in the beginning of the year to actually outsource the volume of calls. And it helps staff prioritize their outreach, you know, who they should be focusing on. We've also partnered with another firm, or another agency, I'm sorry, that helps us to prioritize our leads so that we know which of our leads have a higher propensity to enroll. So having that unique tool built into our CRM also allows us to prioritize the calls that we're going to make. So we don't settle just for email. We got on the phone, and we got on the phone much more frequently, and we realized that students really appreciate that phone call still. So we'll definitely continue to do that.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I appreciate that. And, you know, I think that Kean is doing such a good job of utilizing its internal resources, you know, taking things that already exist and using them in a new way, you know, and finding these ways of using their counselors and creating these one-on-one opportunities. So many things that I hope that a lot of you on your campuses can do, you know, right now or this summer as you're looking ahead. What I wanted to share from the TWG Plus perspective is a little bit more about larger scale communications, about messaging, and maybe about shifting perspective a little bit. So I wanted to start by talking about search. You know, most institutions are spending a lot of time and effort, and let's be frank, money too, thinking about search as something that starts in the summer, or something that might happen in the fall if you're doing senior search. You know, you're buying your SAT and ACT names, you're reaching out to students, you're trying to get them to apply, and then by the time January, February comes about, you think search is done. Well, that's not necessarily true. You know, last year in 2015, over 250,000 seniors took the January SAT. They're not all first-time test takers, but many were. And if they weren't first-time test takers, they were students who were trying to improve a score, trying to get a better scholarship, trying to improve their chances of being admitted somewhere. So there are students taking the SAT late in the cycle and even beyond January. Jen, if I recall correctly, Kean actually purchased even later than January, correct?
Yes, that's right. We purchased names from the May SAT and definitely saw a yield on that. So we'll do that again.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not too late to take action with these students. Remember, they are sitting for a multi-hour test that they're putting a lot of hard work and effort into late in the cycle. That means they're still very much engaged and undecided in their college search process. So don't be afraid to do late searches, reach out to new names, purchase new names in the spring of the senior year or even later. Also, if you have all these names from your original search campaigns who haven't responded, you know what? Give them one shot. You know, if you talk to them back in October and November, their situation has changed. In March, April, May, they're not thinking the same way that they were. Many students may not have gotten into schools that they wanted to. They may not have gotten financial aid packages that will allow them to attend the schools that they had wanted to initially. So why not reach out to your responders? Give them a chance to interact with you. When you're going to do that, though, create a strong call to action. We normally say try to get the students to campus. Your best chance to yield them is by getting them to come straight to campus. So there's no more request more information. There's no more 3-month communication cycles. There's, hey, we haven't heard from you in a while. We're still accepting applications. Why don't you come talk to us? Bring them right to campus. And the students who do reach out to you, again, it can't be a delayed follow-up. It's a very accelerated communication plan here that has to be immediate and it has to be personal. So get your counselors on the phone, or if your counselors are still busy working on yielding your already admitted students, use your current students. Let your student ambassadors reach out to these late applicants and say, hey, I understand that you're thinking about coming. We would love to have you become part of the incoming class of 2016. Would love to see you on campus. Why don't you come visit, take a tour? I'm giving a tour this week. Try to engage your current students. Make a different kind of contact with the prospect that they might not be getting at other places. And ultimately, utilize all the resources that you have in your funnel or in your office already. Also, think about coordinating your post-admission communications. So think about the way that most of your communications go right now. In many cases, you may be utilizing, if you're doing a massive search in the fall, you may be using third parties, you may be using an outside marketing firm, or your own internal marketing department might be helping you coordinate those messages. But you're spending a lot of time and effort creating beautiful emails. You've created these view books that you've distributed out on the road, you've mailed to students, travel pieces, brochures. You spent a lot of money and effort creating all this beautiful, glossy, flowery wording and things that really make students want to come to you. And then they're admitted. And then suddenly the communications in many cases turns to, here's your next step, submit your deposit, submit your health forms, sign up for an orientation. It goes from being marketing and selling the institution to procedural, colder, here's what you need to do next. It's as if you're taking the student for granted already from the point of admission. So remember that the sell doesn't stop until the student is sitting in your classroom. And even if many different offices need to talk to admitted students, student life does for orientation, the health department does, academic advising does, financial aid does. All of these different offices need to have one institutional voice, and it needs to be the same voice and same tone that you establish during the search process. So try to bring everybody together, try to make sure that your post-admission communications are every bit as geared towards marketing and talking about the institution as your pre-admission ones were. And talk about things like return on investment. The students are now looking post-admission at financial aid options. They're looking at making a major investment. Parents in particular are worried about how much money it's going to cost. So don't just talk about when to file the FAFSA, or don't just give students raw numbers on how much financial aid they're going to get. Remember to continue to market the post-admission, your return on investment. Remember to continue to talk about the return on investment. Talk about, what different students have gotten for their money, what kind of jobs they've gotten after graduation. And ultimately, make sure that you think of your post-admission communications as being every bit as important as the communications that you started beforehand. And this is one of the things that we started talking about with Kean and with some of our other partners. We want to create post-admission communications that don't just make the student feel good. We want to make them feel great. We want to excite them. So communicate with them in a way that will get them online. Make your admission package strong enough that when they read it over the table, the first thing mom and dad do, the first thing the student does is pick up their phone and they tweet it, they share it by Facebook, they Instagram it. They want to share it with their friends, because what does that do? One, it gives them a way of feeling proud about themselves, right? They go out and they're excited to share. Two, it allows their friends to reinforce that positive energy. Oh, that's fantastic that you got admitted. Congrats, that's the best. Three, it gives you a chance to respond to that student online. If you create a hashtag, if you create a campaign where you can follow that student action on Instagram, on Twitter, on other social media sites, it gives you an opportunity to jump in and say, we're excited that you're admitted too. It engages the student in a conversation. Ultimately, you want them to start feeling like they're part of the institution the second that they get admitted. You can see here a few great examples of different things that are being done by universities of different sizes and all across the country. A lot of people are using these posters, something that students can take a picture with. Pennants in Morgan State's case, Iowa State or University of Idaho is doing magnets that students can put on their refrigerator that go out with the admission. Some people are doing videos. University of Virginia Wise is doing acceptance videos that students can share. So there's a lot of things going on here that are taking the paper application package, bringing it online, and encouraging the students to then share it online. Also remember that, the students are on their phone. So all of your post-admission communications, make sure that anything you're doing, and really this applies to your search communications too, make sure that everything that you're sending the student is mobile first. Make sure that all of your landing pages are responsive, all of the forms, anything, anywhere that you're driving the student to take action post-admission, make sure they can do it from their phone or their tablet just as easily as they could do it from their desktop. You want to take out roadblocks or obstacles that the students can be running into. Keep social media active and on point. During the summer, make sure that you're promoting, what the experience is going to be like when the student gets there for orientation. Make sure that you're talking on social media about how excited you are for getting ready over the summer for students to come to class, or that academic advisors will be touching base with them. Profile some of your current students. Let them know, what your current students do during the summer to give them a more social outreach. But keep your social media points active. You can also use mobile marketing and general online marketing to generate new leads and to support the rest of the activities that you're doing in your direct communication. So you're emailing students, you're doing outbound communication on Twitter. That's assuming that you have a conversation going on with a lot of your students already. You can use different techniques like remarketing, online advertising, CRM onboarding. You can do a lot of these things that will help get the institutional name out to students online, whether they've talked to you or not, to increase student awareness that you're still accepting students late in the game, or that there are opportunities to visit the campus over the summer, late in the cycle. So what are we talking about when we're talking about these things? We'll just go over them very briefly. Remarketing is when a student comes to your site, and once they visited, whether it's your landing page, your acceptance landing page, and they go elsewhere on the internet, advertisements will follow them. So you can have things, ads that say, remember to visit campus, or, opportunities to visit campus throughout the summer, so that students are constantly seeing it even when they're somewhere else, when they're not on your own website. CRM onboarding allows you to take a list of students whose email addresses you have. Maybe it's all of your admitted students, maybe it's those late search students that you bought, and allows you to set it up so that students will, again, see your name and everything else at different on different websites without ever having actually raised their hand to request information for you, but they'll see your advertising across the internet. IP targeting, very similar, only you could do it based on a physical address if you don't have email addresses. Or geofencing is interesting. I like this particularly if you're trying to recruit transfer students late in the cycle. Geofencing lets you target internet advertising based on location. So if you have certain feeder community colleges that students are going to be graduating from in May, maybe you want to target every household within a 5-mile radius of your feeder community colleges with online advertising to let them know that you are accepting transfer applications, you give great transfer scholarships, there's easy transfer of credit towards degree. You could do all of that with geofencing, which is a great way to support the efforts that you've already done with your counselors making phone calls, with extending your search. It's really just about expanding your toolbox and trying to figure out every possible way that you can to get your institution's name out in front of students who are looking for application activity late in the cycle. So between Jen and I, we've talked about a lot today. What really do we want you to walk away with? One is to, increase your yield opportunities. Yield is dropping nationwide, has been for a while. You really need to rethink about how you're talking to students post-admission. Make sure that you're talking in one voice, make sure you're talking consistently, make sure you're creating new opportunities to yield students that you may not have done in the past. Utilize your admission counselors to personalize communication. Create immediate calls to action. Make sure that students are encouraged to do things now, whether it's submit an application, whether it's visit campus, whether it's call an admission counselor. Make sure that it's not just request more info. Make everything immediate and make it worthwhile for the student too. Grow your funnel late in the cycle. Remember that there are opportunities to reach new students and to still bring new students into the funnel, whether it's January, whether it's April, whether it's June. There's still an opportunity to reach new students, whether that's through outbound communication or through online advertising. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Maximize your post-admission marketing, as we talked about earlier. Think about post-admission communication the same way that you think about search, and ultimately expand your toolbox. If the tools that you currently are using aren't working for you, use new ones. Open your mind a little bit, expand your toolbox, and be willing to try some new things and really see what you can do. So we hope that this has been helpful, and we'd like to entertain a few questions before we go. We've got two here on a similar issue. Charles and Kevin are asking about, what percentage of your budget would you set aside for post-admission communication or for fourth quarter strategies? Kevin, the other question is similar, just in terms of how much does this cost, or if you're running on a shoestring budget, how do you make this work? Well, I would say this. It may not be a matter of setting aside more money. It may be a matter of reallocating the funds that you have. I understand fully that, budgets are tight right now, and it may be difficult to go out to a president or to a vice president and say, hey, can I get an extra $20,000 or whatever it might be for X, Y, or Z campaign? But I would say this. Think about the fact that the amount of money that you're spending on search or on pre-inquiry communication with your students, trying to generate leads, you're reaching out to students who don't know you, who may not have a lot of familiarity, and all you're trying to do is get them to say, hey, can you send me more information? And you're spending typically a lot of money on that. When you get to the point of admission, you've got students who've already said, I know who you are, and you're in, let's say, at least the top 10 schools that I'm interested in. In terms of which one I have a better chance of influencing, I have a better chance of influencing the student once they've applied. So applying that logic, I would say that thinking about the return on investment on the dollars that you're spending, you're going to get a better return on your post-admission than you probably are on your pre-inquiry. So maybe it's worthwhile looking at your search, reducing a little bit, changing your strategies slightly to take a little bit of money away from your search and applying it more towards your post-admission communications and towards your fourth quarter strategies. And also, a lot of the ideas that Jen talked about earlier don't require a lot of extra budget at all. I mean, Jen, with all of the programs that you put in, did you feel that they really negatively impacted your budget at Kean?
Not at all. I'm glad that you asked this question, because it's one that I think we were fearful of when we started talking about hosting late events. And our lunch program was $500. We had 50 students on campus, which yielded us much more than what that $500 costed us. And then also the theater event, we had deeply discounted tickets. They were almost free. We actually utilized the performance of the night before, so it was their rehearsal performance, and we pretty much had next to free tickets and really just paid for the treats, the coffee and the dessert. And we had I want to say we had a total of 40 students attend, but those were non-decided students that were able to make a deposit that night, and it was on July 17th, I want to say. And then also the other event that we did with the barbecue, like I said, our student organization was already having it, so we were able to split the cost of some of those different activities, and we had about 120 students attend, so 120 more students that were on campus than hadn't been in the past, and that was just a few $1,000s that event. So if you're looking at how much we spent on just fourth quarter yield event strategies, it was well under $5,000, and that's just for the boots on the ground approach.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Jen. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be expensive. There's a lot of ways to change what you're doing to be more impactful without necessarily killing your budget, I think is really what you need to walk away knowing there. Oh, this is interesting. Jeffrey is asking, how do you make these fourth quarter strategies work for community colleges? And as a second sort of follow-up to that, what are some good ways to promote high growth opportunities once you finish schooling? What's the value add for a 2-year degree versus a 4-year degree, and how do you get that across using these strategies? I would say two things, Jeffrey. We have experience working with community colleges and some very large ones, actually. And community colleges are almost uniquely suited for these late approaches, because students who haven't applied at all by late in the cycle, community colleges have a shorter process typically to go from point of admission to point of enrollment. So in terms of ease of access, I think certainly your messaging can focus on that, so that students know that it's an easy way to get started. In terms of the value add of a 2-year degree, I think that talking about the fact that, you're late in the cycle, we can get you in pretty early, and you're going to save money by studying with us for 2 years, while still getting the benefit of being able to transfer to a 4-year college later. So it's easier access. It's a good ROI message. And I think that, in terms of overall strategy, post-admission communication is something that we've seen can lack at community colleges, or even just the admission notification itself is more, because you've got open access. You still need to make the student feel like something significant has happened for them and something positive has happened when they've been admitted. If a student is considering a 4-year institution and a 2-year, that 4-year is going to try to say, hey, it's this great thing that you've been admitted to us. You need to give that same feeling to community college students as well. Make them feel like being accepted is a great thing. Make them feel like they're being accepted and welcomed by your institutional community. Don't just take it for granted. You need to show pride in your institution by letting the student know that this is a big deal for you and that it should be considered every bit on par with being admitted to a 4-year institution. So put more effort for 2-year schools into the admission package, into making it exciting, making it feel more like an acceptance package from a 4-year school, and also continue to target your messaging, understanding that late applicants may have a different motivation than early applicants do. So focus on, like Kean did, the idea of a good option in your backyard. Focus on speed of access, the fact that you can go from applied to enrolled very quickly, and focus on return on investment, I would say, are all good things there. And then this one's interesting, and I think, Jen, you might be able to comment on this too. Tracy wanted to share with the group that they started a fast track admission day plan for late bloomers and felt that worked well. Have you guys done anything with like instant decision days or anything that helps students sort of fast track applications late in the process?
Yeah, we have, but I'm loving the idea of fast-tracked enrollment. So what we've done is instant decision days, but it's really stopped there. We provide them with an instant decision on the spot. They're able to, complete their application on the spot. We waive their application fee. We do that throughout the year and certainly during the summer for our late applicants. But I'm loving the idea of a full enrollment fast-track day where, maybe they can even take their placement exam and, register for classes. So that's a great idea.
Great. Well, thank you very much to everybody for joining us today. We need to bring this to an end, but by all means, if any of you watching this live or in the future, any of you who might be watching a recording of this, have any questions, by all means, please feel free to reach out to us. Both of us, I think, really enjoy talking about strategies like this. You can see our contact information for both Jen and I here. And if you got a lot out of this webinar, certainly those of us at TWG Plus would love to see you join us for our next one. On February 17th, we're going to be hosting a webinar on social media in higher ed, how to get results for your institution. There's a lot of things going on out there between Snapchat, Periscope, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. It seems like there's new stuff every day. So by all means, if you're trying to figure out how to navigate the social verse, make it work for you, please join us on February 17th. And with that, thank you very much for attending. We hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll see you again in the future. Take care.